Please join me in welcoming Minister Sudds and Zinat Jan Mohammed, who's my colleague and the Executive Director of the Atkinson Center, in a fireside conversation.
Thanks so much, Jenny. I just asked the minister if I could say like 30 seconds before she gets up here, but thank you so much for joining us this morning. Minister Sudds has worked as a community advocate, an economist. She has been a local councillor in Ottawa, and we're so very pleased to have her here this afternoon at the Summer Institute. We've got participants from across Canada, which is wonderful. Most of the regions are represented, and we look forward to hearing from you today. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much to Jenny and to Zinat for hosting me here today, for the kind words and this opportunity. It's really fantastic to have some time with all of you here today about a topic that I know is near and dear to all of our hearts, and that is, of course, early childhood education. We know that far too long the fees for early learning and childcare have been unaffordable for too many families across this country. And we know that there are still Canadians who are struggling to make ends meet. Having said that, advocates such as yourselves, educators, and others continue to challenge us, to challenge government in partnership with the provinces and territories, of course, to continue to do the work to transform our early learning and childcare system right across the country. And I can tell you, when I took on this challenge of being the Minister for Families, Children and Social Development last summer, I was closer. I was really excited about the opportunity and the challenges that I knew certainly laid ahead. I have 3 children myself, albeit no longer in childcare in their teenage years, but I remember those struggles, and I cherish the caregivers who ended up caring for my 3 girls and the impact that they had on their lives. So this is certainly an issue that's been near and dear to my heart all throughout my adult life. So as you all know, back in 2021, our government made an almost $30 billion investment to create this national early learning and childcare system. And 3 years later, I'd suggest we've made some good progress. And that progress, a bit of it was outlined, and I'm sure you've been talking about it today, but really focused at the outset, right at the beginning, on affordability, on getting rates down to 50%, which we did quite quickly in a number of, or all provinces now, but also 8 out of 10 provinces who have gotten to $10 a day quite quickly. So reducing costs for families, the affordability piece. The second focus, as you all know, is around creating more spaces for families across this country. And of course, supporting the essential early learning and childcare workforce that is so necessary in order to make this all work. So here in Ontario, families are currently saving about $8,500 a year based on that 50% reduction. And this is a substantial savings for families here in Ontario that I have the benefit of being able to talk with a number of parents, and I'm sure many of you either have benefited or know people who have benefited, and it's really changing lives. And that is really what this is all about as we work to roll this out across the entire country. I know most recently I was at Trent University, and I had a conversation with a young mom there who got pregnant while she was in her first year of studies. And her ability to get a childcare spot on campus at 50% reduction in fees gave her hope, gave her the ability to continue on in her studies while her son was able to get really high quality care. So this isn't just about numbers. We talk about numbers all the time, but these are real stories. These are people's lives that I think collectively in this room, we're all dedicated to improving as we do the work to build out this national system. Having said that, the next piece of the hard work, of course, is the space creation. You know, we heard, as was just said, we've seen about 100,000 new spaces created since this was announced. Our goal is 250,000 new spaces. And we have about 2 more years to get there. So the clock is certainly ticking. I think it's also important to reflect, I mentioned just over 100,000 new spaces created. Across the country, 750,000 families are now benefiting from this system, having access and having at least 50% reduction. 750,000 families. It's quite impactful, the work that we get to do. And of course, the final pillar, which is the workforce, and which I know is very central to the focus of your discussion here today. And this system that we're building and continue to focus to create more spaces can't happen unless we have the workforce to make it happen, to care for our kids and to be able to create new spaces so that everyone who needs it can have access. We know the ECEs across the country are the glue of this system. They're the heart and the soul that truly make this happen. So I am working with our provinces and territories. This system is not built by us, the federal government alone by any means, but the provinces and territories and Indigenous partners are key to ensuring that workforce strategies are developed and implemented so that we all see the success and reach the goals that every PT has committed to reaching alongside the federal government to ensure, again, that families across the country have access. The last thing I'd like to mention before we sit down and have a more candid conversation is the work that's gone into Budget 2024. If some of you have been paying attention as we've rolled this out over the last month, our focus in this budget has been about fairness. It's been about fairness for every generation. And it means continuing to support families through their journey and working to make life cost less. And of course, that includes our affordable childcare. So we announced an investment of $1 billion that is focused on a childcare expansion loan program. So what that means essentially is making low-cost loans and some grant dollars available to non-for-profit or public childcare organizations that would like to open new spaces or expand on their current premises. That is a focus on purpose to our non-for-profits and our public childcare creation piece. We also recognize the need to ensure that we get more ECEs into the profession and ensure that they are well supported. So measures I'm sure we're going to dive into here as we sit down to chat. Having said that, as I wrap up, this budget, in essence, as I said, is about fairness. Our 3 main themes are getting more homes built, making life more affordable, and growing an economy that works for everyone. So to wrap up, thank you all for the work that you all do in whatever capacity. Whether you're in research and academics, whether you're in the field supporting on the ground, whether you're an ECE or an EC studying to get out into the field. We can't do this work and build this system without your input, without your dedication, and your collaboration. So I'm thrilled to see you all here today. I know there's a lot of passion and expertise in this room, and I look forward to continuing to be able to work together to ensure that this national early learning and childcare system is affordable, is accessible, is high quality, and is inclusive, so we can continue to change lives across the country. Thank you. Should I bring this one? Yeah. Are you okay with that? Yeah, works.
We're going to share the mic and do the ECE thing. Thank you. So this morning we heard from experts that discuss the implementation of early learning across Canada halfway through the Canada-wide plan. Looks like there's another mic coming in behind you. And
Testing. Yep.
yeah, it's working. And Elise is graduating.
Amazing.
So yeah. We are, as we move into the second half, we are concerned about the growth in the for-profit sector.
Mm-hmm.
We are very concerned about, the growing interest of private equity firms in childcare. And we are interested as a public and a nonprofit sector in expanding, but organizations need support from nonprofit organizations. Building Blocks for Childcare, for example, is in the audience to help move this agenda forward. We've also heard from experts that discuss the challenges and possible solutions around the shortage of a qualified early childhood and childcare workforce. We recognize that childcare is comprised of early childhood educators, cooks, cleaners, other support folks around kids who have disabilities. But this is a gendered profession, and it is facing an uphill battle around being attracted, but also staying in the sector. So the announcement that was made recently to expand through a loan program through CMHC, Canada Mortgage, we're very pleased to hear about that. That's an important move forward. And also the initiatives around supporting students who are in post-secondary education in terms of their commitments. So this landmark investment in early learning is appreciated, but we'd like to discuss with you some of the challenges that we're experiencing, some of which will not be new to you, but we'd like to share our expertise. And thank you for being here today. Yeah.
Pleasure.
So the first question, just so people get to know you a little bit, tell us a little bit about your journey to the office and what your personal connection is to this ministry.
Oh, okay. That's an easy one. This is probably the easiest question of the day, right? So myself, I'm the mom of 3 daughters. I started my career as an economist in the public service, and admittedly having kids really opened my eyes up to not only the desire to do work that felt like it really mattered, but also the fact that there was a lot of work out there to do that really mattered. And I became very protective of my time, if you will, as I'm sure there's some busy moms out there. And if I was going to be out working my butt off every day, it had to be for work that I really cared about. If I was going to leave those kids in someone else's hands. And so all that to say, I made some very random pivots and just looked for work that really resonated for me. And so I ended up leaving. I was with the public service at the time working, and I ended up going to start a business association that represented my community, our technology park in my community, and got very involved in the community. A number of organizations I was volunteering with, our food bank, our Ottawa Network for Education. And needless to say, that really targeted me towards the desire to serve and to do more to help others in my community. So I ran for city councillor. I did that for a while, and then the journey got me here. And in all honesty, it was really just about finding work that resonated. And so I have to tell you, I served as a member of parliament since 2021, not in cabinet, not a minister. And having never really aspired to politics, never in a million years thought I'd be sitting in this seat having this conversation. But last summer, when the Prime Minister asked me to meet and asked me to serve in this capacity, I have to tell you, it was obviously an incredible honor, but also just the ability to work on behalf of families. I'm biased, so I'll say moms across the country, and really work to build out this system. Among other pieces of work we're doing, we're rolling out a national school food program we announced in this budget, and a number of other responsibilities that are really impactful pieces of policy and program for Canadian families. And so really just happened here through a dedication and a desire to do work that mattered, and feel as though I've really found it. I've met my match.
That's fantastic, and only a year in, so good to know. So what are your priorities in meeting the goal of expanding access to childcare for more Canadian families?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, from the outset, day one of rolling out this program, my predecessor, of course, Karina Gold, who was shepherding it then, was really affordability. So focused on getting rates down as quickly as we could and getting to $10 a day by 2026. And as I said, we have 8 provinces or territories already at $10 a day, and every province at 50%. So having achieved that quickly is remarkable, and as I said, has been changing lives for now 750,000 families across the country. But with that, I think very much meant that childcare became accessible for so many families who never thought that they would be able to access childcare from a cost perspective. So suddenly, when fees are at half of what they used to be, there are families stepping up saying, oh, wow, let's get on the list. Let's get a childcare spot so mom or dad can get out into the workforce. And so that has meant a dramatic increase in wait lists in many, if not most, parts of the country. And therein comes the challenge of now, when you ask about priorities, ensuring that we create these spaces, these opportunities for families in every part of the country. And it is remarkable to me as I deal and I travel across the country in all provinces and territories. There are very unique differences in most provinces and territories in how childcare is offered, in how it's run, and how it's received by families. And so there's a lot of nuances and differences in the challenges between provinces and territories that are important to take into consideration as we look at the space creation piece. As was mentioned, we have a focus, rightly so, on investing in non-for-profit and public spaces. And for the most part, that is represented in our agreements with all of the provinces and territories. And we are seeing that. But there are some provinces and territories who are still striving to push back, to push for more private spaces. So that is an ongoing challenge that we continue to navigate. And then I think lastly, I could ramble for a while, but I'll let you ask your next question. I think the other piece, though, that is a priority for me and is a recognition, yes, we need more spaces. We need to get to 250,000 by 2026, and we just need to keep going because we know the demand continues to increase. But we can't do so unless we, at the same time, are focusing on the workforce. So that workforce challenge it varies, not only from province to province, but also places in provinces. It is more pronounced than in other places for different reasons. We are a massive country. massive geography. We have a lot of rural and remote communities as well to consider in that equation. And so, again, working with the provinces and territories to ensure that they are fulfilling their commitments as per our funding agreements, and that we are seeing investments in the workforce. What that means, I think there's been some good examples. I look to PEI, I look to Nova Scotia, who's done some great work with respect to wage increases, but also pension and benefit plans that are, really a step in the right direction. Because ultimately, we need to ensure that the workforce is well compensated and well respected. And we do that by ensuring that they are well compensated, first and foremost. They have benefits, they have a pension to rely on, and we make the investments in their continued training.
Thank you. I'm glad you raised the examples of PEI in Nova Scotia. But we also have a number of jurisdictions who have frozen their investments in early learning. And trying to get access to some of that data and some transparent reporting has been pretty difficult. So how are you ensuring accountability regarding spending of the federal dollars, for example, and pushing the provinces to continue to make the contributions that they used to make?
It's a great question. And as I mentioned, each PT has a signed agreement, a contribution, a funding agreement with us, the federal government. Along with that, there are terms and conditions, as I'm sure you would all expect, but there are also reporting requirements. And so the reporting requirements require annual reports that demonstrate how they are moving towards and achieving the agreed upon targets. There are audited financial statements that are a requirement as part of reporting. And then there are also action plans. And I mention action plans because they're a very useful tool in working collaboratively to ensure that we have dialogue with the province and territory, and they demonstrate via their signed action plan how they will get to agreed upon targets. Having said that, we are at various states of signing action plans across the country. There are definitely some parts of the country, some provinces that are harder than others in that progress and in striving towards, working collaboratively towards these goals. So it is an ongoing live discussion, undoubtedly. Not to get political, but there's certainly politics at play as well. We have a number of conservative premiers across the country. So that does at times, it can, not always, but it can cause some challenges. So those reporting requirements are our tool, our essential tool. They're ongoing and live discussions to ensure we get what we need, let alone further transparency as well for Canadians.
I'm just going to go back to the issue of the workforce. So, as you know, early learning and childcare is under the purview of each provincial and territorial government, but the federal government's investment has made a difference, right? We do have a significant shortage of qualified educators. Like, there are a number of folks here that lead early childhood organizations, and if they put their hand up, you can get a sense of who doesn't have enough staff, you know. We're in the Greater Toronto area where, programs are accessible. We've got 5 community colleges delivering early childhood training programs. But we have seen a reduction in the number of applicants coming into early childhood. Where there has been an increase in applications is in jurisdictions that are bumping up the wages and providing benefits. So what's the federal government's plan around how to deal with this shortage in the early childhood workforce so that you can achieve your goal of building out more spaces as part of the Canada-wide plan?
Yeah, it's a great question and a difficult issue, frankly. As you pointed out at the beginning, we're talking about provincial territorial jurisdiction when it comes to workforce. So our levers as a federal government primarily exist through our agreements, our early learning childcare funding agreements, primarily, in that, again, there's an expectation that each PT meets the agreed upon targets. Having said that, there are dollars tied to workforce as part of these agreements. And as you've rightly said, in the provinces or territories that have made these investments in workforce, in increasing wages, for example, is one element, we are seeing improvements. So we know that it's important. We know that these investments need to be made. The provinces or territories that have not, again, through our action plans, these are opportunities to ensure that they put a plan in place. Timeliness of this, of course, is an ongoing discussion point. The other big piece that I would point to on this, perhaps two, we also, myself as the federal minister, I have a table where I meet with the provincial ministers responsible for early learning and childcare as well. On an annual basis, myself, and there's working tables throughout the year. And the commitment that was made last summer prior to myself, but through the previous minister, was for collective work to be done on a workforce strategy. And so having said that, the provinces and territories have this work ongoing collaboratively, and I expect to see progress of that later this summer, early fall. The other thing that I would point to as well is in budget 2024, we did announce a student loan forgiveness program, particularly for ECEs who choose to work in more rural communities. And I'm sure you can all appreciate the logic to that, in that it is very hard in a lot of parts of this country, rural communities, to attract ECEs despite the demand. And so we've introduced loan forgiveness, much as we have, for example, with doctors and some other medical professionals, to attract them to these communities as well. So that is a new initiative that we've just put forward in this year's budget. Above and beyond that, we do see some collaboration, different provinces who have introduced various programs, either through the colleges or local universities, that are looking at ways to help increase enrollment, but also give students hands-on placement experience, etc. And I can tell you, I was in BC not too long ago having a conversation at one of the childcare centers, and they had said how their best recruitment tool is those programs, because they get these placement students in, they get to try them out, and then they get them to fall in love with their center and their workplace. So there are some initiatives, all that to say they're not consistent across the country. We need to continue to encourage the provinces and territories to have dialogue with themselves, to learn from each other, to learn from some of these best practices and things that are working, and to ensure that we have a more supported workforce.
Thank you. The idea around placements is so critical around early childhood training, anything actually that has that kind of engagement with kids and families. We heard this morning from Beth Dewey, who's an economist at University of Toronto, where she talks about the fact that the forgiveness of the loan program is so important, but it's limited right now to communities in the rural and northern parts of Canada, which I completely respect. But why not forgive the loans of all the students that are enrolled in early childhood programs?
I don't have an answer for you. It's a great question. Let's see. Obviously, this is new for us. This is a brand new program. Just introduced this budget. So let's see how it goes. I hear you loud and clear.
Great. Okay. She tells us it's low-hanging fruit, so let's go with that. All right. The other thing that was raised a number of times this morning and has been in discussion with our allies and our partners is we experience this shortage of qualified educators in the sector that is not organized, that are working in small nonprofit organizations, but where there is, coordinated bargaining, where they are represented in the school boards and municipal programs, where they are getting paid good wages and decent working conditions. No one's getting rich working in childcare. We know that, right? Unless you're, of course, an owner and know all about private equity. But that's a side conversation. So is the can the federal government take on a role around helping the sector get better organized and be better represented? For example, school boards have early childhood educators working in their full-day kindergarten in Ontario and other jurisdictions. What is holding us back from the federal government taking a leadership role in this pathway?
It's a great question. My mind goes to jurisdiction, if I'm being honest. Again, we're talking about workforce, which is provincial and territorial jurisdiction. However, I should add as well, and I'm not sure why I haven't mentioned this yet, but in this year's budget, we did also commit to creating and I forget the exact term, we called it sectorial table for the care economy. And so that will be both myself and Minister Seamus O'Regan leading that. And so if you think of caregivers, both obviously at early childhood stage as well as for seniors. And so we're going to be spending a lot of time together over the next year or so engaging to start to have those roundtable discussions and really hearing from Canadians and those in the sector around the care economy and care workers. So it's an interesting topic to bring back. I can't say it's a conversation I've been part of at this point in time, likely due to jurisdictional issues. But it's an interesting point to be made. One of the things that I quite enjoy about this work and this sector is there's some incredible advocacy and some incredible organizations who do really amazing work, either from a research perspective, an advocacy perspective. There's a lot happening, and it's really high value. And I know it's impactful. It's impactful for me in my decision making in the work that I do. And so, there's always an opportunity to advocate in other forums and other ways as well, right?
We could make a little tweak to the Constitution.
Right. Just a little one?
Just saying. Okay. You've been traveling across Canada, meeting with lots of folks right across all of the jurisdictions. Can you talk about a couple of examples that stand out for you about the good progress that they are making?
Sure. So I've mentioned already Nova Scotia. To me, Nova Scotia really stands out in that I think it was December, it was late fall, early winter, if I remember correctly, where they announced their defined pension contribution plan, as well as wage increases and benefits. And personally, I think this is a game changer. I really do. This is the first province or territory who has taken this to this extent, this seriously. I think it shows a real commitment in workforce And I think it's incredibly needed. And I'm sure everyone in this room would agree with me on that. So it's very encouraging to me that they've taken these steps. They're a great collaborative partner in all aspects of the work that we're doing to create this system there in Nova Scotia. And so, you know, I there's still there's still a lot more spaces that need to be created there. Don't get me wrong, but they're on a good path. And so I would point to that as one example of some great work. I mentioned PI as well. I always love visiting PI because I think there's something amazing about having a population that they're able to try things and to move quicker than the rest of the country, frankly. And you know, we're seeing wage increases. They're doing great on their space creation. You know, they still need more ECs, don't get me wrong, but they're on the right path. And my mind was blown, I have to tell you, slightly off topic perhaps, but I was out there not too long ago, and they have a full-blown school food program across the entire island. And I just think, like, wow, it's incredibly impressive. And I think it's a testament to their commitment to children and to families. And we can learn a lot from the work that they've been able to do. And it's a small population, but we can replicate it.
But those are great examples. And I think that also some of the territories where it is a smaller community, they are able to move forward more quickly. So I'm going to look at my phone because I have to check my Facebook and Instagram.
Are we streaming?
No.
Oh.
I have to look
I thought you were serious.
I know. I have that look. I have to look at the questions that have come in
Okay.
for you. Okay, so just give me 1 second and forgive me.
Can I talk about something while you do that?
Please do,
Okay.
yes.
You know what we haven't talked about yet that I would love to talk about is our legislation, C-35. And arguably, this is one of the things I am most proud of that we've been able to accomplish in the recent past. And for those of you who aren't familiar, this is our early learning childhood legislation. I need another coffee. That to me, you know, we have been able to pass this legislation. It's received royal assent. That means families into perpetuity, into the future, indefinitely, can rely on the fact that their federal government is dedicated to providing early learning and childcare. With the principles, yes. Like, how many people have been working on this for decades to get us here? And we're finally here. Our kids, our grandkids, their kids will have access to a national early learning and childcare system. Like, this is massive. And so, you know, I came in at a good time. So much work happened before me. So I will not take the credit for getting that tabled. But all that to say, we got it passed. So no future government can ruin this for us.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question from the audience. How will the federal government keep provinces and territories accountable for delivering on their Canada-wide agreements, including ensuring that the funding is spent in the public and not-for-profit sector?
So we touched on this briefly, but having said that, again, each agreement lays out very clearly the requirements and the objectives. Through annual reporting, we, i.e. myself, federal government, we get a report. It gives us an update on where they're at as far as those commitments and those achievements. We get audited financial statements. And arguably most importantly, as I mentioned before, the action plans, which gives us an opportunity to see and frankly negotiate how they will get to their targets. And that's really important. Now, speaking of the piece around private versus public spaces, the agreements lay out what the expectations are. So here in Ontario, for example, when the agreement was signed, it was agreed that the proportion of private spaces could remain at 33%. 1/3 of childcare spaces could be in the private sector. We hold the province to that account. Other provinces have no growth in private spaces, but some provinces had no private spaces to begin with. Again, each province and territory is quite unique. So those are commitments that have been made that I hold the provinces and territories to account for. Undoubtedly, some have pushed and some have publicly made statements that they would like more private spaces. But I hold true to the fact that we are building a national system with public dollars. And so those public dollars need to be spent in creating public, non-for-profit spaces.
And we support your efforts in that, trust me. We have a question about will the Canada-wide funding around reducing fees be eligible for families with school-age kids?
So again, it does vary across the country how provinces or territories have spent their fees. All that to say, the focus to date has really been around those early years. And so it is not every jurisdiction has done it that way. Ontario, obviously, we all know who's in Ontario that that's the case. Some provinces have been able to spread it further into school age years, but not everyone. There's no more dollars to be had from the public purse at the moment. We've made 5-year commitments. We have expectations from the provinces and territories. We will hold them to it. We will begin negotiating the next round of 5-year agreements in the not too distant future. And I certainly have that piece in my mind as something that has been raised in various parts of the country. We have to start somewhere.
And we have. I'm okay if you increase my taxes a little bit. Just saying. I'm old now. I can say what I want. But we have a question about the immigration process for international students. Okay. So we have an extreme shortage of trained early childhood educators, but those programs are also attractive to students who are coming from outside Canada. Will the government consider prioritizing permanent resident status for those folks?
Great question. Yeah. It's a certainly, I respect the question. I understand where it's coming from. It has been raised with our incredible immigration minister. Having said that, I have nothing to report at this time. I think that there is a consensus within government that, in federal government, that we are incredibly dedicated to building this system and to ensuring that this is successful for Canadians. In saying that, again, we need the workforce. And so, I think we continue to have conversations about where there are ways to improve, ways to do better. I certainly take this as an opportunity that we look at as much as possible, ensuring that internationally trained folks who have come to Canada can certainly benefit and stay and teach our little ones. So I certainly respect that. And I often go in classrooms as I'm traveling in different programs, colleges, universities across the country. And there's a lot of international students, as you've said, who are attracted to this field. I believe it was PEI was telling me they recently did a whole trade mission out to try to attract more students to teach in their province. So there's incredible value there to be had. It's a policy decision through immigration, but I hear you. It's certainly a good idea.
We have two more questions. The next question has to do with training. So I know that you're going to talk about jurisdictional challenges, right? And I get that. So we have a bit of a variation right across the country around, certificate, diploma, degree, ECE, ECA, childcare assistant. Like, is there any possibility that the federal government could help take this on? Because like when you're a teacher, right? You can go from province to province with probably an application. When you're a nurse, same thing. But in early childhood, I guess, because somebody said earlier today, I think it was Vicky, that it's a relatively new sector. But if we want to build something that's sustainable in the long term, the training and the qualifications that people have make an important difference around the quality of care that they can provide.
Yeah, another interesting question. Thank you for that. More thoughts to take back to the team. Yeah, and I was actually having a conversation with someone earlier today on exactly this point, on the fact that in some provinces or territories, you can quite quickly become an EC1, for example, versus other PTs where it takes much, much longer. So right now, the tools that we have really are strictly around enforcing one of the 4 principles, which is quality. And admittedly, quality, it's something that we look at through each agreement, right? Each province and territory. But when it comes to the workforce and, if you will, kind of standardization of that educational achievement, for example, that is something that will take an incredible amount of collaboration through the PTs. And I hate to be that person who talks about jurisdiction because it's terrible. I'm a convener when it comes to that, right? I can convene the provinces and territories. I can ask for workforce strategies. I can work collaboratively with them. But in the end, it takes them being willing to do so.
We respect the Constitution. We live in a democratic country, and I am ever so grateful for that as, an immigrant from many moons ago. Now, last question. What can we do to help protect this plan as we move into the next federal election?
You all know what I'm thinking. So I won't say that part. I take this seriously. And I often think about what's at stake. And I think about all of the work that our government continues to do for families and for children. I think about this $10 a day national child care program. I think about the work we're about to do to create a national school food program. I think about the Canada Child Benefit. I think about introducing free contraceptives. I think there's just so many pieces of really incredible work that we are doing as a government for women, for moms, for families. And not everyone shares those priorities, shares those values, and it's terrifying to me. And so I challenge every Canadian that wants to have that conversation to think about that, to think about what's at stake, and to choose wisely. specific to our child care program, how many times have you heard me say provinces and territories? We need willing partners. We need leadership at the provincial and territorial level who shares our values of creating a national system that's affordable, inclusive, right, high quality, accessible, who values the work that ECEs do. And so I don't know which province you all live in, but reflect on that. Do you have leadership at the provincial level who values this? If you don't, whenever that election comes, think about that. But in the meantime, use your voice. Advocate for what you believe in. Advocate through whatever organization, advocate on your own. Push for what you believe needs to be done at the provincial and territorial level, and work with like-minded people to push for that. That's how we affect change, with our voices, with our advocacy, and with our votes.
I want to be respectful of your time, but thank you so much for joining us today. You've, given us a lot to think about, and also we hope that you will hear from us that we are willing to work with you around resolving some of the challenges that we're facing. We got a group of educators, leaders, scholars, labor activists, advocacy organizations, and we're all on board with this plan. And, really thank you for being with us this afternoon and sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you.